What's up, bookworms? Welcome to episode 115 of the Cantina Book Club podcast, where readers can find interviews with authors of all genres. I'm Megan, self proclaimed content queen, here to bring you insights from the authors themselves. Each week features a Cantina conversation with an author. Sometimes they're returning guests, and sometimes it's someone new. So please be sure to hit that subscribe button so that you never miss out on an episode. And feel free to browse through existing episodes so that you can catch a previous interview about a book that you finished. Today's episode features a chat with Erin Bledsoe talking about her book, Mob Queen. That book is available now. Such a fun conversation with Erin. I really enjoyed getting to know the more authentic pieces of her personal history and how she channeled some of those experiences into her writing and developing her character story. And if you didn't know, Virginia Hill, Mob Queen is based on Virginia Hill's life, based on true events, and her story is like really fascinating, and Erin did such a good job of bringing it to life. Some spoilers do pop up in these conversations, but the episode is more enjoyable anyway if you've read the book. So if you don't know why Erin and I are just cackling at what she put one of Virginia's love interests through, a mafia boss, then hit pause, add this episode to your playlist, and go pick up a copy of Mob Queen. The interview will be here when you're ready. Just a heads up that I often use adult language to express my feelings towards these authors and their work, whether the characters just need to get their shit together or I'm saying, oh, what the fuck to the author for making me feel things. Just please be mindful around listening ears. Books coming out this week of December 2nd, Fallen Gods by Rachel Van Dyken. I just finished this last week. It's a romantasy based on Norse mythology, so like Odin, Thor, Loki, but she puts quite a spin on it. It's pretty good. And I'm going to be interviewing Rachel next month. So I'm excited to dig a little bit deeper when we have our chat. And now a word from Crystal Hope, founder of the book podcast Connection.
Hello, listeners. My name is Crystal Hope. I am the host of Must Love Books podcast and the organizer of the book podcast Connection. The BPC is a networking group of over 100 book-related podcasts, from fantasy to romance to horror and every genre in between. There are even podcasts for authors and writers. Check us out on Instagram at Book Podcast Connection or at www.bookpodcastconnection.com and discover your next bookish obsession.
Now, I know I'm biased, but I definitely recommend you all check out the amazing plethora of bookish podcasts and subscribe if you're looking to get more out of your reading lists. And without further ado, get ready, grab your favorite drink. Here is Erin. So today we've got Erin Bledsoe. We're talking about Mob Queen. That book is available now. Erin, thanks so much for joining me today. I love this story. I didn't expect, like, I love historical fiction, but I did not expect for it to be so entertaining. And I would follow Virginia into war. Like, seriously, she's like such an amazing and fascinating character. The fact that it was like based on a real person, that's like so fascinating. I'm excited to learn everything that you did to bring this story together. I'm happy to dig deeper
Okay.
today.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it. I keep getting the same sort of response with they had no idea they would love following her story. So I'm really glad it resonates with all women.
Yeah. Just like living vicariously and just like someone who, because she's just unapologetic and she finds a way to, we're going to get into it, but she just finds a way to use what she has, what very little she has,
Yes.
and finds her way navigating through treacherous territory, so to speak. But yeah, so without further ado, can you provide like a summary of the book so that listeners can follow along?
Sure. I'm awful at summaries, but I will do my best. So basically, Virginia Hill, she started as a small town. She grew up in a small town, and she had a very abusive father and such. And so she goes to the city for kind of a better life. This was Depression era. We were looking for a better life. She married a man who she thought would give her a better life. And then my book follows her friend who goes missing, and that's how she gets tangled up in the mob. There's a lot of loose accounts on how she actually got tangled up in the mob, but I did stay true to where she worked and who she met and all the connections that she used to get there. And so Mob Queen just follows the mystery of finding out what happened to her friend, but also how dangerous it was getting involved in the mob. But she is one of the only women who made a name for herself in the mob during the time. So she has like her own little history, and she has mostly existed in the footnotes of Bugsy Siegel's story. So, one of my biggest goals with this book was just to show her that she was her own force and Bugsy was not her entire story.
Yeah, yeah, it was, and she was also, it was funny because her name popped up most in association um with Bugsy, but also she was involved with multiple fake relationships or arranged
She
relationships,
was.
considering yeah, like considering how many cooks were in the kitchen in the mob and like how many players there were, and somehow I just like it was like she used the fact that she was a woman and an attractive woman to her advantage, and she was clever, and she could think on her feet, and she was, I guess, morally gray, but she still had morals. She was still like had a conscience. She was so kind.
Mhm.
Like she looked out not only for herself, but it's like the whole reason was like she's looking for her friend and she's trying to get answers. And then through some activity along the way, she encounters situations where she's put to the
Mhm.
test, and she makes some really hard decisions like against her moral compass. And it was so fascinating because it was like how far she had to prove herself, and she had to show she was in it, but then as like what she had to do to prove that, like once she crossed that line,
Yeah,
she had to stay
I think my
committed.
goal with just I've been following like just bad girls of history. My first book was The 40 Elephants, and now we're in Mob Queen. I really just want, when you read about these women, to, like, obviously you can say I wouldn't make those decisions or choices, but it's really hard when you're a woman in that position in that time without any resources. So I always want readers to finish the book and be like, oh my gosh, I don't think I'd make that decision, but I understand why she did. So that's always my goal with these girls, and I think that came through really well with Virginia.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopping onto that, can you share about I want to explore your background, and whether it's professional or personal, what led you either work previous titles that you've released, what led you to bring a Mob Queen into the world?
I have to reference book one to explain my like what I do, but with book one, it was about a group of female thieves, and with them, it was the same situation where they were born poor, and they created organized shoplifting, and they were pretty smart about it. And I remember, like, I was raised in poverty, so I could really reflect on my mom with the situational choices she made that were scary, but it was like between like eating and rent and all this stuff. So I was very like attached to that story. And then when we go into Mob Queen with Virginia, it is the same. I took a lot of stuff from my mom as well. So she had a lot of abusive relationships. And then I always call her like the queen of improv because she
Uh-huh.
could have a job interview she was not qualified for and just nail it. And it was the same way with like she was just a classic con artist. And so was
Yeah.
Virginia, really, when it came to it, because she was not qualified for any of that, but she just adapted and was a chameleon. And yeah, that was so easy to write. And it was really easy, not easy to write the domestic abuse type stuff, but I do know I witnessed enough of it to understand like how it gets out of control and how relationships go from like feeling normal to being toxic to just getting out of control. And I wanted Virginia to have a lot of control with everything. But when it came to Bugsy Siegel, it was very just, she couldn't always figure out if she loved him, if she hated him, if it was both. But yeah, so I think she was easy to write because I had so much to draw from with like my mother and my childhood and stuff. So that's what drew me to Virginia when I was doing my research on which was my next criminal. I really just wanted to explore her story.
Yeah, and that's really fascinating. I'm glad that you did because I had no idea. Like we all know, like we hear about 1930s Chicago mob scene. Everybody, there's so many names that are recognizable. We know who it is. But yeah, I'm really glad to have learned about Virginia's story and that you were able, I imagine maybe it was a little therapeutic for you too. You had like a little creative freedom with that. You can also like draw on your experiences and it's maybe a way to like inadvertently not work through
No,
it, but
it
just like
was. I
you
did an
know?
interview, an article, and I had said that same thing. Like her story was, I was able to just like look in the mirror at all my darkness and all my shades and be like, okay, this is what I've been through, and more people have been through this, and I just want all women to know that if you've been through this, like this story's for you. And yeah, it was very healing to write her story.
Yeah, especially since like I think in general women tend to be just like dismissed or underestimated, especially those what almost 100 years ago in the setting that this book takes place. It's like I would hope that the conversations with social media and everything and with more people, society's more accepting of women in leadership roles, not enough, but we're getting there. I hope we'll current administration aside. But like, it's yeah, we're still seeing that factor of she used that to her advantage. She was like, I not only that, like she had to do more to prove herself, but then she also used the tools at her disposal that she did. She knew how to like do it. And I just remember because I did like read this around the time that it was released. And I just remember those are like one of the stronger things that I took away from it was like a woman is making such an impact and in her place and how she's in her
Mhm.
place like to navigate as like to her advantage and I just thought it was like because she back to your point about where yeah she was struggling with it a bit which I felt that through your writing through her character because it was I think what was like first person point
It
of view
was, yeah.
right yeah so it, did you always know that it was going to be like first person or did you play around with third person or you just went with it.
I love first person. I just think it's so intimate, and I felt like the story definitely had to be very intimate because I am telling the story of a mob mistress. I think if I'm going to get readers to sympathize and at least get deeper into her motivations, I felt like first person just was just perfect for her.
Yeah. Yeah, and it could be tricky though because we're just following her story, right? Like you're not switching point of views. So that's like a reason why first person is just you can help the reader connect to the story. So it, or like connects a little bit easier, especially for women because I remember there were points in the story where I was like even though like she was so chaotic and some of the things she did, 'cause she's also I didn't expect, but like I laughed out loud at some of these things that she was doing. Like she will try to be spoiler free, but like tying Adonis to the bed, I was like,
That was
I was just like some of
that was
the
Chef's kiss though.
yeah,
He deserved it.
he did. But I just remember I didn't see it coming. I did not see it coming. She was just like, "Oh, hey," and then all of a sudden he's just like, "What the fuck?" Like, what
He was like, "What are you gonna do with me?" He was like half a little bit into it, and then he realized, "Oh, she's leaving me here."
he was like, "What are you doing? This isn't a game." She's like, "Peace out." Like she,
Yeah, I loved her going down to the desk and being like, "Undisturbed for a few days, please." Okay.
yeah. And then when it was mentioned later, like, "Oh, he wasn't happy," she's like, "He's tied up at the
Yeah.
moment." And it was like, like literally, she's like, but I understand that he wasn't happy with that. She's just like, okay, now anyway, let's move on. I just loved it. It was hilarious, and I was like, certain, even though it was like she was messy about some things, I was still rooting for her. I'm a fan of female rage, justified or not.
So
I'm just
funny.
like. It was amazing. She was no, you brought so much fun to a character where I imagine there was mostly only like non-fictional accounts of it, right? I like so I want to explore how you navigated that and like comparing to your other title, like because you like have the other title. I want to explore like did you approach it like maybe comparing the two? Were there any big lessons learned from the first release that you took going forward with this one and stuff like
So I think with Alice, which would be the 40 Elephants book one, there are lots of points where I felt like, I think this falls into when you're getting reviews and stuff. A lot of the general reviews on the book one was it was a race through. Like it just was start to finish was a race. And I know I really wanted to slow things down with Virginia because I felt like if I raced through the story, and there are still points I feel like I did, but I felt like if I raced too fast, there was going to be just no way to connect with her and want to read more. So I think one of my biggest lessons was just to slow down. And you're going to have readers who are like, the pacing was too fast here or too slow here, or readers,
Mm.
every reader's different. But and then I have people who talk about book one and they're like, it was just so perfect. The pacing was amazing. And then I have people who talk about book two and it's like, oh, it's too slow. It drags. So I think just I did slow it down because I wanted everything to feel very real. And there's also just so much more history on Virginia than I had for the 40 Elephants. It was very, 40 Elephants was newspaper clippings and cops mad at them, which is amazing, but not enough
Mhm.
to really tell a story. So I had to plug in a lot of narrative for that one, fictional narrative. And with Mob Queen, I had so much to already jump off of. Really, just the mystery and her motives are what I guessed on because I wasn't her. So I can't say, like, she did this because of this, but everything else was just very true. So I think getting to write her the truth and it not be male heavy, like, it's not, she was in every story with them, just not written about or on the big screen, other than our Annette Bening, of course. But I just mean
Mhm.
she's featured. I read so much mob books on all of the men, and she was just like sprinkled in there, and just but very footnote. So like when I get to like piece together everything she did, it's so cool to like realize she was a major player. And yeah, I think my biggest lesson was just to slow it down, and if I have the history, to make sure I plug it in best I can with the fictional element I add.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool because I know nothing about Virginia Hill prior to this, but I can tell you took care with that because you were like, I just not with the pacing, but like how the timeline and the significant movements that she made. And also, I think it was like with the prologue or the author's note or
Mhm.
both, they thought that she was like, she came off as like, oh, I didn't know anything. I was just there. But it's like it became clear eventually, like at least through yourself and your perception of it, like, no, she knew a lot and she was
Oh
a
yeah,
very much a
I
Virginia
watched her
lookout. Yeah.
interview with the trials, and she's just every time they ask her a question, she's like, "I don't know nothing. I don't know nothing." And it's so funny because it's like we know she knows everything. The
Right?
people, they couldn't prove that. She was just very smart. She acted really silly and like womanly, and I don't know anything, and it worked, and that's how she really rose so fast.
It's absolutely, like, just talking again about how she used that like, how people underestimated her, she used that, and even, like, with authorities too, not just with, like, the criminal, like, organized crime, with the authorities too, like, how she was trying to sneak a package onto a train, and they were, like, checking bags, and she was like, "Oh, what's up, no, officer?" And I think at one point she brought up, like, women things, and he was just like, "Oh."
Yeah, would you be checking my bag if I were a man? And they're just like,
Yeah. Like, you don't wanna find whatever you're gonna find in there, like, blah, blah, blah. Like, I just it's hilarious that because even still to this day, like, men, they just like it depends, like, married men, not so much, but, like, a lot of, like, in public, men are like that. Oh, I think luckily, like, my husband is not he doesn't care about if I ask him to go to, like, the store and get feminine products for me, he does not care. He does not it doesn't phase him. I'm just I can you go get something for me? Like if we're out or whatever. And he's like, yeah, okay, fine. And my mom's just like, oh, your father would
well,
never. Like, oh, it's like, I hope that the generations, as they're like, as we're like progressing a little bit, that it's like, get a grip. Like, it's the reason you have
yes,
kids.
it's very much like, okay,
Like,
send me a picture so I don't get the wrong ones.
it's really funny. Like over time, he's learned. I think he's pretty meticulous in general. So I think he's just, when we first like started, I think one of the first times I asked him, we weren't engaged yet, but he had known enough to where he recognized the
Okay.
brands and the products and stuff. Or like he'd been in Walgreens with me while I had to pick something up. So I think he just like recognizes it, and he's like, or like, and especially at Costco, like we get it in bulk, and he was like, "What? Do you need this? Which this flow, that flow, mix? Do you want it mixed box?" Like, I was like, "Yeah, get a combo, honey. Like that's helpful."
Good for him, though.
I love it. Yeah, I know. I'm fortunate. In that regard for sure, just because it's like he's over it. It doesn't phase him at all. Well, as far as like the genre of historical fiction goes, what draws you to that?
To like Bad Girls.
No, in general, sure, yes. It either historical fiction as a genre, or yeah, like that subgenre of historical fiction. Anything like what draws you to
So
that?
I love historical fiction in general, but I feel like it's a very intimidating genre because there are just great historical fiction writers. So when I decided I wanted to take writing seriously, I was trying a bunch of different genres. I did fall into mystery quite a bit. I think I'm very comfortable in mystery, but I came up with the 40 Elephants idea and I thought, what if there's like other female criminals, like crime history that is intriguing, that could tell stories? And I was talking to my agent, and we both knew that it is a gamble because you have to write about someone who is appealing, and the story has to appeal, and everything has to check all of these boxes. Otherwise, it's almost just glamorizing crime and things that I just don't feel where historical fiction with female main characters mostly focuses on all the amazing things they do. Especially when you go into World War I, World War II like novels, it's just about amazing women doing amazing things during really challenging times. So I would be writing about women doing bad things, but I my agent and I were committed, and then we found an editor who, she's like so sweet, and she loved the concept, and I got her on board, and she took the 40 Elephants, and then she also purchased Mob Queen, and I pitched two more books that she purchased recently too. So she is in on it, and I do think it's a good little subgenre of historical fiction that it does keep readers engaged, and it has a lot of elements that I think work. I Again, it was just hard making sure that gamble was worth it and I could get an audience, and I ended up getting one, and I'm very happy with that.
I think that's such a good intuition, and there is an appeal if you interested other people who believed in
Yeah.
it with you. That's awesome, because I do, yeah. In historical fiction, it is really tricky because like I imagine you got sucked into like so many rabbits, or like you got carried away. And that's why I love to ask about the other research involved, just with any genre, because authors, they'll be like, "Gosh, I got sucked into like 4 hours for something that only made like three lines in the entire book."
That was me with the her time in Mexico because it's super vague in everything I've read. So then I had to like dive into criminals of the time in Mexico and see if I could like connect her to any of them. And yeah, that was just probably weeks of research for one scene. But I wanted to get it as like close as what I could find as possible. But yeah, no, it is a lot of rabbit holes. I've gone into some where I have picked a criminal and I've been like, oh, I want to write about her. And I will just spend like months researching her and getting ready to like pitch her. And then I'll find out she did something just so bad. And I'm like, oh, I can't do this. And so she just like goes off the deep end and she's someone else's story because I have my limits. So I have done that several times with female criminals. They're too bad for me.
You gave them a kind of a little shot, especially I imagine maybe just your upbringing. You have a little bit of like towing the line, because you do understand maybe a little bit of the desperation that people fall, they have to toe that line. So because you understand that experience, so you understand it, like it explains it, but you've approached the point where you're like, I can't excuse
Oh,
that. You're like,
exactly.
I
Yes.
can't.
There were several of them. They had so many boxes I would have checked, but then they're just like too violent, or yeah, I just could not make it into a narrative that I feel would appeal and also that we could identify with. Because if I can't identify with it as the author, I don't think my readers will.
Yeah, and then I feel like to an extent, readers can tell when you're not like 100%
Oh,
into it. It's like if you're having fun and you're into it and you're engaged, it's easier. That comes off on the page where your readers are going to get engaged because like you're feeding that passion into it. And so they're getting that from it. But yeah, if you're like tiptoeing the line and you're like, I'm going to mention it because I have to, I don't really want to, I think that readers can pick up
a
on that too.
really
So it's like,
Yes, a really great
yeah.
example is of that exact thing is in my first book. I included a little romance. It was just very tiny. It was not the center of the plot because we're talking about a female gang. And I didn't really want to include it, but it was like a pressure point. Like I think we need like a little romance in the main character's story. And readers could tell. They were just like, this was unnecessary. You didn't need this. And I'm like, I know I didn't need it. I know. I'm with you. I didn't want it either.
Yeah. Like, would you ever like want to write like a romance or like historical romance? Because a lot of Virginia's story was like romance adjacent because of her struggle with like she didn't know how to navigate or compartmentalize her feelings for Bugsy. And so I thought that was interesting. Like, would you ever approach like a romance in any way, or maybe that's kind of like you're like,
I
maybe
think one of my favorite parts so far about all these female criminals is they don't need no man. But I definitely think I could. So my next story doesn't really have too much romance in it because there is a little bit, which I enjoy and I think readers will enjoy. And it's all historically true. So that one's fun. My next book I can't say too much because I don't have much on it. I sold it on pitch alone, but it's about an all-female drag racing team in the 1950s, and I have very little on these women.
how it
Exactly.
existed. Like,
I
what?
have very little on these women. I know they did things that were important for drag racing in Kansas City. And then I have some interviews with some older ladies, but I don't have a lot of information on them. So I was able to take my grandma and grandpa's love story and kind of merge it with the actual facts of what happened. So I think that will be my first dip into romance, and it will be one I experienced and saw. So I think that will be my first time writing it genuinely with like love and no man hate. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, I am yeah, because there's definitely like following a love story in the context. That's really cool that you got your grandparents' perspective because courting back then was so different than it is today. Like I've been with my husband for 15, 16 years. I even joke around or like, but in all honesty, if any case scenario, if I was single tomorrow, like I don't think I would get remarried. I don't think I would be interested in dating again. It's a whole different ball game than what I'm used to, like from dating 15
Oh
years
yeah.
ago. But also, it's just the horror stories I hear from like men are trash. And it's like men are horrible. Not all men, of course, but like it's like yeah, always a man.
Yeah.
And not to say that women aren't not to say women aren't toxic either. Like we all know plenty of examples where women are like they're not innocent, but at the same time, or maybe it's my online algorithm that's like feeding me certain things, but it's hard to make the argument that it's 50-50,
Yes.
you know?
I know.
Like it's
I
hard.
think too, it's also just
Yeah,
like
it's
my
hard.
childhood stuff. My grandpa was my only representation of a good man, and I get to write him in a story. And all of those representations of bad men, I get to throw in my other stories. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
it really just depends. I know there are good men, of course.
of course.
Historically
Yeah.
speaking, a lot of these female criminals had male influences or abusive relationships, and I like to highlight those.
It's important. It's just like reality. It's because, again, why I like historical fiction is that it highlights these truths, these stories that we don't learn in like conventional education which with good reason for the most part. But there's like so many stories out there and generations, even geographically, like just the U.S. alone. But then you can look across like
Mhm.
Europe and stuff like that, or like different continents where they have stories to tell too. And I think that's why, like how you were saying earlier, like World War II, it's still like, God, I don't even know, maybe right? If I'm doing it right, 80 years ago, something like that, almost 90 years ago. Ew, gross. I feel like I'm like, oh, the 90s. No, they were
Yeah.
30 years ago. Well, it's just like because you look at it, and that's why there's so many, a lot of stories, and a lot of historical fiction books do. There's a lot to feed off of that era, like because it was such a global thing, and it affected everybody for years. It wasn't just like the war years; it was like years leading
Yeah.
up to it, and then the aftermath. Like I thought, like speaking of historical fiction writers, like Catherine Ray, I think maybe you've heard of her. Her most recent book was like the English masterpiece that came out, and it was like about a gallery in London, but it was set in like the 60s, I believe. And there was like a curator, and where Picasso just died, and so they're like doing this big exhibit and like getting all these donors and the press is there, but the curator's assistant, she's like, that's a forgery, and everybody hears it, and they're like, holy shit, it's a big deal. But like just the details, like you learn that where, oh, Nazis were confiscating and stealing works of art, like expensive, well-known works of art. And you think about, oh, that's a whole subset, like a whole underground
Yeah.
market of it, where there was real life forgeries going on because people were like, who's to say we didn't find this in some Nazi's
Yeah.
basement? And then one of the things that they determine is that the paint used on the forgery, it was a composition, like some chemical composition of a paint, like something that didn't exist at the time of the painting. So I'm like, that is so meta to
Well,
me, but it's like it's an
yeah.
example. Yeah, it's an example of something like how things that we don't even think of, but like that at like one time period just affects like so many things and like so many
Yeah.
layers behind it. That's why I nerd out a little bit, like I geek out about like just historical fiction. I think just because it's so fascinating, and also like if the stories if the storytelling is well done, it just makes it that much like more cool. And I'm just going to speak for myself. I like reading books where like I feel a little bit smarter
Yeah.
when I'm finished. So I'm like, it's just like if it's entertaining, it's just like a bonus. And so yeah, that was just like an example. And I'm gonna
No,
ramble
you're
on, whatever.
fine.
But it's
No,
just yeah,
some of my favorite reviews are when I have someone say, I didn't even know who Virginia Hill was, but I picked up a bunch of books after this to do a bunch of research
that's so
into the mob, and
cool.
I'm like, yes, research the mob. They're really crazy. Like, the mob
Yeah,
like runs the US in the 30s. Please research them.
I can only imagine because yeah, like we get the characters in your story. It's like they were well connected and they had so much influence over people who had certain
Mhm.
titles and they were job positions that they held. And it was like, and even now, I think another book that Wayward Girls by Susan Wiggs, it was about the nun school, and how some teenage girls were sent there to like get corrected, but it was like they were abused and all that. They were there just because either they were gay or they were pregnant or they were like unruly, what for whatever reason that they were deemed unruly, but they were like abused there. But it was just like so crazy to me how like like historically we learn how many, oh, it was because they were connected, right? It was because like the politicians and stuff, they like the some of that abuse was like so under the radar because the politicians were like connected to that
Oh, yeah.
community, and so they would just either they knew about it and they were keeping it hush, or they didn't care, or it's so yeah, it's just like it just gives you insight into like that the whole circle and how like how big really that network was and how many facets of life that it touched. And so that's like, 'cause I'm in the Chicago
Oh,
area, I'm
yeah.
in the Chicago suburbs, so that's why, yeah, so that's why when I was like, oh, like let's get into this, I was like in my cozy like little
Yeah.
seat and I was like, let's go.
Book 3 is about a rum runner, in the 1920s. And it's like back when Prohibition was happening. So rum running was a big deal. And she was one of the only female rum runners. And I started researching her, and I didn't feel like I had enough to tell a whole story. So my agent said, "Hey, bring in the district attorney that brings her down." So I go grab the district attorney's book, and I'm like, "Yes, I will write the good girl and the bad girl." And so I'm researching the district attorney, and it turns out the government was also a criminal at the time. So I ended up getting, actually, the government was worse than my rum runner. So I'm writing
Oh,
like this
wow.
sweet district attorney trying to enforce the law and prohibition around so much corruption in the government. And then I get to write the rum runner who is just trying to make some money, take care of her sister. So that ended up being just like back in like the people who were in charge were basically just all tangled up with the laws they were pushing. It was, that one was crazy for me, and I think it's going to be enlightening for readers for sure.
Yeah, I don't know, it's the shock factor. You're not like necessarily you're not trying to exploit it, but it's just like we should be aware
Yes,
of
I
these
know.
things, you know?
All these parallels in our government were actually happening in the 20s as well. So let me show you
Right.
one.
Like, let's not fool ourselves. It's a tale as old as time. It has been going on, and there's just more money, more concentrated money involved, and more like, ugh. Because I hear things, it's like, oh, the pendulum, right? And so I'm just trying to have faith that things are getting so dramatic right now that the pendulum will swing the
Yeah.
other way for the
Yes.
good. And I also, because I'm like raising two little boys, they're so white. It's like they're fair skinned, blonde, and we're like, I guess, considered middle class. I'm not. I got laid off months ago, and so where they grew up with a certain structure, right? But then where they were working at home and all that. So it's like it's different for them anyway from COVID and everything. I don't know if they're ever going to remember it, but this is what they know. As they're getting older, they're becoming more aware of things, and I just hope that, like, because I worry about AI. AI scares the shit out of me, even though I like dabbled in it only for like, oh, what should I do if I want to do the thing? Like I stuff like that where I'm like, I think I said like, oh, um, how should I establish myself as a freelancer? Or how should, like, if I want to get these types of jobs, where should I look? It's like I don't know. Those like kind of the extent of it, but even then it's like it's like three questions that I've asked because I'm like, ugh, it just terrifies me,
Yeah.
but it's not going
Yeah.
away.
It's,
So it's like, you just gotta learn to use it as a
yeah.
tool. But I get afraid because it's like my kids, it's like our kids are their generation. They're gonna have access to so much more technology and so much like sophisticated technology. And it's tricky. It's almost like the parents, but like our parents went through it, their parents went through it, whereas like more things were accessible to us than our parents, and then things were accessible to them than their parents. So it's like almost every generation they have to deal with
Yeah.
something new. And so for us, I feel like it's just a little scarier. I don't know how old your kids are, like if you want
Yeah.
to
I
share
have
that, but like I'm sure you
I have
understand.
three
Yeah.
boys, 8, 6.
God, is it the Wild West in your
It
house?
is, yes. I love them though. They are the same way. They are, I feel like they are just good kids though, and they have all of the right like morals and moral compass and everything. So I feel like I've given them everything I can give them to make the best decisions, but it's still absolutely terrifying like sending them out into the real world.
Yeah.
I have so much anxiety over that, and I think that's just parenting. It's not going to change.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's just like you live with a tiny, like it's just like a tiny big bit of anxiety that just
Oh yeah,
stays with you.
consistently.
And it's like, because even though like what I tell my friends, I'm like, I don't know, you just level up.
Yeah.
You're like learning new parts about yourself. You're discovering new parts about yourself. It's like, oh, I know how I am as a mom, and I can freak out over this, that, and the other. But certain other things I'm like, I'm gonna pick my battles. This is not one of them. And it's just so at the end of the day, like I don't want them to turn out to be like racist or misogynistic or murderers. I want them just for them to just value human life, people as equal. Yeah, it is just they're an asshole. Don't look at their skin color. Don't if they're an asshole, maybe they're just an asshole. Maybe they got something else going on at home that has nothing to do with you. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
it's
It's like
just
even as we're adults, we still deal with a lot of the
it's
same
also with
things,
boys,
right?
it's
It's
like
just
you're also just trying to make sure you're raising them to just respect women and women's voices. And
yeah,
there's so much that goes into raising boys into men, especially when you've only seen a lot of toxic men until you're just like,
yeah,
it's crazy. Describing parenthood is
yeah.
impossible to people without kids. I
Uh,
can't explain it to you. It is
it,
a circus.
you know, and I feel like it's almost like an unspoken understanding. Like if anybody, it's like, oh, you got kids,
Yes.
you get it. It's just like it's just a matter of like, oh, you don't have any boys, okay, or oh, you only have boys,
Yes.
okay. It's just that's why I have two, and it's like they're 3 years apart, and it's the Wild West, and the second one definitely has it's second born qualities where I'm like, he just chooses violence
Yeah.
every day. I used to joke that he was the spawn of Satan because he's just such a wild
Hmm.
card. And no matter how many times we try to tell them, no, we don't do that. No, don't. That's not how we act. It's just something either. Like, luckily, he's been in preschool. He starts his last year preschool next week. And luckily, he doesn't act like that in school.
Oh
So,
yeah.
like, if he knows how to act in an appropriate setting, but at home, he's just like, I don't know. And even my aunt, my mother-in-law, she takes care of them once a week, and then my parents take care of them. At least during the summer, it was once a week, and they were like, "Yeah, he was being a bit much
No,
today." Like he's just your grandma. You're like your Grammy. Like now he knows.
I
No,
feel
it's
like
just it
my second
was
born's the same. He is wild at home, and in school, the teacher will be like, "Oh my gosh, he's perfect." Like,
yeah.
me, but I'm glad he's behaving in school.
Exactly. That's what people tell me too. Like, no, that means like you're doing
Yeah,
a good job.
it's all
Like he's comfortable
yes,
with
it goes
you.
into their comfort
Yeah.
levels. He can be himself at home, and that's fine with me.
I mean, exactly. As long as he knows how to act like with other authority figures, or he knows like social cues, like, oh, no, we're not being crazy right now. We're here to do this activity and then move on to the next activity. Oh, it's snack time, so we're all gonna sit down together versus like, yeah, at home. So I like to ask this. It's a two-parter. What were the most challenging parts to write? What were the most enjoyable parts to write?
So we've already been over it. Definitely the abusive stuff was really hard to write. Just be based off my mom and stuff, getting to put that to the page. But it was also, like you had mentioned, pretty therapeutic to just put it out there. And then I want to say the most enjoyable parts were Virginia getting to a point where she had a lot of power and she knew how to use it. I even think at the end when everything was, I don't want to spoil anything, but when at the end where she's like finally thinking she has a way out, yeah, I think based off what research I did, I think her happiest time was getting married and having a good man and getting to have a baby. I think she only ever wanted like stability and someone that loved her genuinely and didn't hurt her and all that. So it was nice getting to put her ending on the page because all anybody ever talks about is what she did in the mob and mostly just Bugsy Siegel.
Yeah, yeah, where it was exactly like she got to do things for
Yeah.
herself and she was able to and yeah, again without spoiling too much, I just remember reading certain parts where it was like, oh, is she gonna find a way out? Is she gonna do this or no? And then I remember writing like my notes at certain parts like become a little unhinged because I'm like, okay, Erin. It's like I wrote that in my notes, like, okay, Erin, what are we doing here? And I was like, what? But it was just like I loved it. I loved every second of it because that's how like you get us invested. And then I'm just like, WTF, okay. Like
Yeah,
exclamation
you
points
trust the
everywhere.
process.
That's so funny because I imagine you were like kind of making certain creative choices and you were like,
Yeah, definitely the tying up to the bed thing. That was just like, I'm gonna do it. And I was waiting
"Mhm."
through. I kid you not, I was waiting through all of the books go through your agent, your editor, another editor, I was waiting for someone to be like, let's take this one out. Nobody did. So it's like, I'm keeping it in.
Yeah. It was such a good choice. It was such a good choice because it just showed like a little bit of her kind of like getting back at
Mhm.
him and but also she still like lured him. She was like, "Hey," like he's like, "Oh, hey, long time, good to see you." And then, you know, and then she was it's like cut to next scene and he's like, "Are we gonna fuck or not?" And she's like, "Nah, peace out." Like
Oh my gosh, that was so fun. No, I think
was like her leaving. It was her like, no, just please don't disturb me for the next
yes.
few days. Like it was.
It was so good. I will say that it's just worth noting. I Another difficult part was the sex scenes because they hinge on like abusive, and I actually did revise several because I would have one editor be like, "This is good. It's raw. It's like perfect to what is a great representation." And then I would go into another editor on the second stage who would be like, "This was too much. It was really hard for me to read." But and then there's also like that weird line with like dark romance that I don't want to glamorize this. It's like I don't want to do that. So I kept having to yeah, the sex was tricky because I wanted to be true to the story but not glamorize it and not fall into like I'm baiting dark romance readers because it's definitely not, it doesn't
Yeah.
fall into that category.
Yeah, and I did appreciate, as far as romance goes, I do like the spicy stuff. I do like the intimate scenes because it adds like aside from a guilty pleasure part of it, I think it does add to readers getting insight to like the
Mhm.
seriousness of how close the characters are
Yes.
getting. And it does so much more than a fade to black or like glossing over what's happening. It's just but yeah, I can totally respect and appreciate the little struggle that you had writing because I did appreciate how the detail, but then it was like because I was describing it to my friend who is self-published. She does the dark romance and she does get into kind of like the taboo stuff.
Yeah,
I gotta read
yeah.
for her sometimes, and she knows. Yeah, so she knows that I'm like dark romance is the subgenre that I'm not attracted to, but I do it because I support her, and I'm like she wants my help, and so I'm like, yeah, like we'll buy physical copies of her books because I'm just gonna support her. I'm gonna be a good friend. Whatever like book events, if she needs a buddy, I'm there because if I can use that as an opportunity too. But no, and I was telling her because I was reading this book when we were camping with her and her family, and it was really funny. I was describing the book to her, and I'm like, it's a mafia romance
Yeah.
adjacent, but it's like historical, not dark romance. I know because I was like, oh, there's some spicy parts, but it's mostly like following this woman who's just like a badass bitch. Like, I was trying to like explain it to her, and she's like, oh, that's like really cool. And so I was like, I think you would like it, but maybe it has what like three or four intimate
Mhm.
scenes, right? It's like it's on page but I appreciated it, and I also thought it was a good call on your part, as maybe as tough as some of it was, but it just shows also what they're that they're it's subjective
It
for them
is. Yes,
too,
it
you know,
much
because they're yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. No complaints from me. I love
That was my
this
first
stuff.
dabble in
Um,
writing spice. And yeah, I didn't want to not include it because their relationship was so sexual and volatile. So I definitely wanted to make sure I included it. But yeah, it was fun to write and terrifying to write and so many different other things. But I'm glad it came across the right way, it seems, and it wasn't too glamorized.
no, it was just because it also adds to because we're in her
Mhm.
head. She wants it, but she's like,
Like,
oh, like,
should
should it?
I want this? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of readers it might resonate for a certain group of readers who are like, we all have that toxic ex
Mhm.
that this just the physical relationship is just so good, and even though you're just like you want that part of it, but then you're like, I should really not be any more involved. Like
Virginia
I,
is,
yeah,
it's just such good sex, but he murders people. So, that's a big red
yeah,
flag.
yeah, and I'm also a sucker for a male character who's like a little obsessed,
Oh,
and like just I'm like, yes, worship
he was
her.
too. He was historically obsessed. So I love that I got to write, like, he did not stop following her. He wanted her from day one to end day.
I think that's another reason why I would follow her into battle, because it's like you got the smarts, you got the cleverness, you can fool them and you can also hook
Yeah,
them. And even if she's also hooked too, but it's just, oh, like she still keeps her eye on
he
the
does.
goal. She's keeping her eye on like kind of business, all business, right? Like a little business with a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of
Mhm.
revenge sprinkled in. And like I love it. I love it. Even though she might be a little problematic, but her original intentions were like she's trying to figure out what happened to her
Yes.
friend. What do you hope readers get out of Mob Queen?
Very much, I think, just finding ways to connect to her, but mostly just I want people to read about these women and do research into these women and discover that they are their own stories. I think too many women get shadowed, and there's so many out there that I have not even found yet that are just waiting in history that I know deserve a story. So really, whether you come out of it and you're like, oh, I didn't like Virginia, or I liked Virginia, or I didn't really care for this story, and that is what I've noticed. Like, if a review is 3 stars because it's like pacing or something tiny about the plot or something, like 90% of readers are so glad they got to discover someone they had no idea had all of this going on because they got buried
Right.
in male history. So I think that's my biggest thing. That's all I really want for all of these girls that I write about. I just want them to have their own story. I always joke that because Virginia, I took a break writing with her and then I would go jump on the Rum Runner because I was like, what should go next? And I swore Virginia was like just right up consistently. And I kept joking to,
She's
yes, I kept joking
alone.
to my
Yeah.
friends and I'm like, I dream about her. She's everywhere. Like, I swear she's haunting me. And if I don't finish this book, like she's gonna get mad at me. It felt like that because she was just consuming me. So I'm just glad I got her out there, and I would love other historical fiction authors to just dive in to these women who I think can appeal to everybody, even though they seem like they're not one dimensional. They have 1,000 layers, and it ends up being a really good story, just like waiting there. So I think that's my biggest.
Yeah, well, don't cut yourself short, because you're the storyteller and you're delivering the story with whatever creative freedom you decide to use, but like you're delivering it to the readers in a meaningful way,
Yes.
and the direction that you take it, it leaves them interested. But it's like, yeah, even what you mentioned earlier is something to be said. Even if they're like, maybe even if they're rating it lower for whatever their preferences are, you're still getting them curious, and you're still getting them hooked to an extent. But like if they're still saying like, no, I wanted to learn more about this person, like that's the big deal. I'm sorry to do this to you. What advice do you have for
What
Virginia,
advice?
aside from, yeah, aside from the reality of what actually happens to her?
I would say her horrible taste in men. I think she needs to I think she needs to think more about her relationships and reevaluate who she chooses and why she chooses them. I think her taste in men led to a lot of her bad luck and such. I think we all have bad taste in men at points, but yeah, that would be my advice to her, to maybe vet your men before marrying them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. In a nutshell. Okay, so Erin Bledsoe, where can we find you online and on social media?
I'm on Instagram. I have a website that is like finicky up and down, but I do have that. It's erinbledsoe.com. And then I was on Twitter turned X, whatever that is now. Yeah, so that's mostly where I am.
Okay, Erin Bledsoe, Mob Queen. That book is available now. Erin, thank you so much for your time and for your answers and for opening up your experiences and just your authenticity and vulnerability and all that good stuff. I'm gonna keep an eye. I love this book so much, and I love what you do with the stories that the research, the factual things that you find. I'm gonna keep an eye out for you, whatever you got going on. But if and when you release another title and you're ready, I feel free to come back. I'd love to
Yeah,
chat.
I'd love to. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
There you go. That was Erin Bledsoe talking about her book, Mob Queen. That book is available now. Check out the show notes to see links where you can find Erin online on social media and where to purchase the book. In the show notes, you'll also see where to find Cantina Book Club on your favorite social media book communities, such as Bookstagram, Book Talk, BookTube, Threads, Facebook, and more. And I would love and appreciate it if you could hit that follow or subscribe button so that you never miss out on book reviews and author interviews. If you have any book loving friends who are looking to get more out of their reading lists, please share Cantina Book Club with them so that they can find upcoming releases and interviews with authors. Another way to help this podcast is to head over to your favorite podcast player and give Cantina Book Club a rating and review. It helps me reach more potential listeners and fellow book lovers like you. And that goes for any podcast that you listen to. It's one of the easiest things you could do to help out. If you need book recommendations, you can reach out to me. I'm always excited to share my recent favorites. Or you can head over to cantinabookclub.com to read more in-depth book reviews of all types of genres. While you're at it, you can subscribe by entering your email on the website so you could get reviews and episode posts delivered directly to your inbox. If you want to support Cantina Book Club even more, you could donate by finding the form on cantinabookclub.com. Whether it's a one-time donation or as little as $1 a month, I seriously appreciate the support and will share my appreciation by giving you a shout out on the show. And finally, one of the best ways to help authors promote their works is to head on over to Amazon, Goodreads, Storygraph, anywhere that you rate your books and give a title that you've read a rating and review. It's free and it helps out almost as much as actually buying the book and also tagging them on social media. Thanks so much for listening and see you next time. Cheers.